Hi, my name is Henry Jolicoeur. I'm a retired psychotherapist and I am a filmmaker. In 2012, I learned that Mr. Larry Ellison had bought the island of Lanai in Hawaii. And I decided to take my camera to Lanai, and for 3 weeks I interviewed dozens of residents of Lanai about their opinion, their sentiment about having Mr. Larry Ellison as the new owner of the island. And the response was extremely positive. And I was surprised that on the 28th of September 2014, my work was mentioned in an article called Kingdom Come by Mr. Jon Mooallem. The article starts mentioning my name and mentioning my work. But after reading the complete article, I must say that this is a very negative article. It is badly written. It is sarcastic. It makes fun of some of the most sincere person I have interviewed on the island, and even makes fun of Mr. Larry Ellison. I think that Mr. Jon Mooallem is a writer that should write for the National Enquirer, not for a serious magazine like the New York Times. I think one of the most shocking parts of the article is where this fourth-class journalist talk about Mr. Ellison, mentioning things like when he is on his yacht playing basketball, Mr. Larry Ellison as someone with a powerboat following his yacht in case the ball fall in the ocean. Well, when you're worth $50 billion, you can play basketball any way you want. What does he expect? Mr. Ellison to jump in the ocean to retrieve the ball? At one point, he compared Mr. Ellison to Genghis Khan. Now, Genghis Khan is a 12th century murderer who murdered hundreds of thousands of women and children in wars all over Asia. Why would he compare Mr. Ellison to Genghis Khan, I wonder? And naturally he goes on to describe that Mr. Ellison has different planes, different yachts, even has a guitar that used to belong to Bono, on, just kind of making fun of the possessions of Mr. Larry Ellison. He even mentioned that Larry Ellison took his jet and flew under the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah, that's totally illegal. Why put this in this article about Lanai? But what he does not mention, and should have, is that Mr. Larry Ellison started a company with $1,200. And he built this company that has now 120,000 employees. And that's only Oracle. There's other companies that employed maybe 50,000 more people. So Mr. Ellison is giving work to nearly 200,000 Americans, and this fourth-class journalist, Jon Mooallem, wants to focus on the negative or the apparently negative or sarcastic comments regarding Mr. Larry Ellison. And I think that is comparing Mr. Ellison to Genghis Khan is absolute nonsense. One of the most famous quote of Genghis Khan is, "I am the punishment that God sent you because you have committed so many great sins. If you were not such sinners, God would have not sent me." This is the main quotes of Genghis Khan. Why would a journalist with a little knowledge of history use such vile person to describe one of American business icon like Mr. Ellison? And when it comes to me, Jon Mooallem used extensively the footage that I have made describing this, describing that. But then he makes even fun of me that I am somebody that pontificate when I dare to mention about Plato, who said that leaders should be philosophers and philosophers should be leaders. How many little islands in this world would love to have someone like Mr. Larry Ellison come and take over their island and try to do something positive with them? I am a big fan of Mr. Ellison. I think he has accomplished great things. Somebody that has learned to play classical guitar. Somebody that knows extensively about the Japanese culture and Zen Buddhism. But that Mr. Mooallem doesn't mention. He preferred to look for the troubling little things. Even at one point, describing one of my videos where I visit an animal shelter in Lanai and I take some of the cats in my hands. He describes my hands as being fleshy hands. Now, have you seen a picture of Mr. Mooallem? Have you looked at that nose? If I was a person with a nose like Mr. Mooallem, I would not comment on anybody's parts of nobody else on the planet. Mr. Mooallem went and interviewed some of the same people that I had interviewed. Unfortunately, he also went and interviewed people like Robin Cade, who was a troublemaker, somebody that was totally against the plans of the previous owner, Mr. Murdoch, and now again will try to fight Mr. Ellison. Well, in the neighborhood of Montreal, we call such person an asshole. At one point, he mentioned that I was theatrical when I mentioned on camera a verse of the Bible, Proverb 29:18, that says, where there's no vision, people perish. Well, that's what Mr. Ellison has brought to the island, a vision. Mr. Ellison was also a very close friend of Steve Jobs. And if there was two people in the world that envisioned to bring their company to another level, it was those two. How many companies in Silicon Valley went bust because the leader had no vision? Now you have to think, where was Lanai before Mr. Ellison? Mr. Murdoch, a multi-billionaire, was asked to please open a pool in Lanai City for the children because the beach is quite far away from the center of town. And he said that he didn't have the money to open and maintain a pool. So that gives you an idea of where was the state of the island of Lanai before Mr. Ellison bought the island. One of the saddest part of the article is the very end of the article, where it talks about a gentleman called Kipamali. When I was in Lanai, I went to a lecture of about an hour of Kipamali, and I was just blown away. This is one of the sweetest, most intelligent men I have met anywhere in the world. His knowledge of everything Hawaiian is incredible. So Jon Mooallem went and did an interview with Mr. Kipamali that was kind enough to talk to him. And I quote here that John described how, in all sincerity, Kipamali showed him a business card of Paluma, the organization that administered the island. And it was written on that card: preservation, progress, sustainability. And he says that Kipamali pointed out with conviction that this job of his was pertaining to the first word, preservation. It's the first word, said Kipamali, preservation. And John says, Kipamali said this with conviction, as if he was lucky enough to live in some unspoiled world where the slogan and the corporate business card reflected its genuine values. Maybe it still did, but maybe it didn't anymore. You go meet somebody so kind and nice and intelligent like Kipamali, and you finish a sentence by saying, well, maybe you're just a naive person to believe what's written on a corporate card. After Kipamali was kind enough to give him an interview. I think that Jon Mooallem is a sneaky bastard, on top of being a really bad writer. Somebody that will attract you so he can get something out of you, and then will make fun of you, will be cynical about what you said, being cynical about who you are. He's the worst type of journalist that can be found on this planet.